Germany is going all in on defence, unveiling plans to more than double military spending over the next 5 years in a dramatic pivot not seen since the Cold War. The $649 billion plan aims to transform the German army into Europe's most powerful conventional army, with spending set to hit 3.5% of GDP by 2029. It's a seismic shift driven by Russia's aggression, rising US isolationism and Germany's own quest for security leadership on the continent. For more, let's head to the US. We're joined by Oz Sultan from the Sultan Interactive Group. Great to see you. What's driving the dramatic increase in German defence spending now?
You know, I think it goes back to the Munich conference earlier this year where JD Vance was started talking about how much America spends and how little Europe spends. And I mean, last year, what did we put in? $1 billion, which was about a third of all the spending combined. So Germany is actually acknowledging the fact that, like, yes, they should ramp it up. Merz has talked about spending up to 5%. Olaf Scholz, who's the chancellor, I believe, has actually said, no, that's too expensive. That would be $200 billion. But that kind of underscores like how much money America puts out for these, wars and the defense of Europe, and how we need to rethink that right now.
It's an interesting debate, an interesting conversation. Obviously, post-World War II, there was a big belief that the United States, from within the United States, actually needed to have a bigger part to make sure it wasn't dragged into another war down the track. There was a Marshall Plan that the US made a lot of money from, not to mention, obviously, businesses like, well, every American major business going around the world. Why do you think that that is, I guess, pushing back into isolationism? And when we have a look at what happened in the lead up to the Great Depression, tariffs from the US on the EU was a really big thing that then led to a massive decline in the amount of goods being sold from the US to the EU. Are we repeating history here?
A bit. I think a part of this is Ursula von Leyen. America is becoming this new big crypto regime. Europe wants to be the CBDC regime that can turn your money off if your politician doesn't like you or you say something the wrong way. Sort of parallel path to that, they seem to want to kind of continue wars in an unending fashion, and I think Ukraine and Russia is just one example of that. America's just kind of decided that, like, look, it's a very expensive endeavor. Europe can kind of pony up if they want to pony up, but they have an expectation that we continually will fund wars to their defense, and there really isn't a tremendous amount of benefit for the American populace, nor is there a benefit in terms of getting cheaper European goods or some sort of an initiative or incentive here. So I think those are kind of your big issues that are on the table right now.
Obviously, the US still has a base in Germany, and that has been controversial throughout the past 20 years. How do you think that the move from Germany actually will reshape its role within NATO? And will Germany essentially replace the US role in NATO?
Probably not. I mean, Germany is going to have to put a lot more money down. I mean, if they were putting in 5% of their GDP, which would be 200 billion euro, maybe. But right now it's leaning more towards Hungary or Poland or one of these countries where, we've stockpiled our tanks, we've stockpiled long-range bombers, that kind of a thing. And they're taking more of a pole position in terms of what the leadership is. It's quizzical where this goes next. And I also am not sure if Europe wants, military leadership in the hands of Germany again. We had a little problem with a small man there several years ago. But the opportunity for them to kind of figure out what their future is really in their hands at this juncture.
It's interesting you mentioned that, and about the public as well. You talk about how the US public is growing weary of US spending on the military right around the world. But what about German public support and European public support for high levels of military investment? Has JD Vance convinced the population of Europe that they do need to be spending more, the governments need to be spending more on the military, do you think?
It's weird because, if you read the German press, which I do occasionally, they are still in favor of continued aggression in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, but they don't seem to think about who's paying for this and the fact that the HIMARS systems, all this stuff comes from us. So I think they're kind of rationalizing this and saying, hey, maybe we do need to take a bigger role. But, with their leadership kind of split party wise right now, and a little bit of a liberal lean going into, their next election cycle, not quite sure where this goes. And it's also quizzical, how the average German really kind of understands the nature of war that's really not too far from them and who's paying for it.
It's interesting, just finally, because obviously Nazi Germany was the reason that World War II kicked off, and I suppose the rise of Putinism could be the reason why Europe wants to be spending more money. It definitely is the reason. Yet haven't we learned over the past few years that the Russian military ain't what it claimed to be? It couldn't even take Kiev.
It's interesting. I mean, right now it seems to be this aerial warfare with rockets and drones, and an ongoing basis. They keep hitting Moscow. They keep hitting near Kiev. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant gets tagged every now and again, and everyone screams about what might happen from that. Hopefully, they've continued to keep that thing shut down. But it's more of, I think, that the nature of war is changing, the nature of these conflicts is changing, and the cost is changing. And Germany, I guess, is starting to realize that. They're also realizing that there's no long-term free check here.
Yeah, all right. Sultan, appreciate your insights as always. Thank you.
Thank you.